the military draft is often seen as beneficial, like it always represents a more patriotic society. In everyday life, people encounter the military draft through bloodthirsty foreign policy, wartime discussions, and even radical pacifism. Although it may seem beneficial, it raises deeper questions about patriotism, masculinity, and necessity. This article argues that the military draft is pointless and counterproductive because it introduces unwilling, poorly trained personnel and disciplinary problems. By exploring the military draft and considering how it operates across generations, readers can better understand why the military draft matters and how it influences ethics. One clear example of the detriment of the military draft can be seen in reducing military effectiveness. In this situation, the military faces lower morale, greater disciplinary issues, and less commitment, which leads to higher turnover and training costs. This response reveals draftees for how they serve shorter terms and leave sooner, increasing constant training needs and creating a less experienced force in practice. As a result, a large pool of conscripts often ill-suited for complex tasks occurs, leading to a poorly skilled army. If a voluntary force had been created, the outcome would be highly skilled professionals, showing that a draft is actually harmful. Another clear example of the detriment of the draft can be seen in economic and social drawbacks. In this situation, the military faces high opportunity costs, which leads to unfair burdens. This response reveals the draft for how significant economic burdens, lost wages, career disruption, on young people function in practice. As a result, disproportionate risk of death occurs, leading to service on the poor and working class, rather than sharing it across society. If a voluntary force had been created, the outcome would be low cost, showing that a draft is actually expensive. Another clear example of the detriment of the draft can be seen in the superiority of an all-volunteer military. In this situation, the military faces professionalism and representation issues, which leads to unmotivated individuals with lower skill levels, less retention, and worse unit cohesion. This response reveals the military for how volunteers from diverse backgrounds function in practice. As a result, an AVF attracts motivated individuals, leading to higher skill levels, better retention, and greater unit cohesion. If a military draft had stayed, the outcome would have been a force not representing the society they protect, showing that the draft is skewed. Another clear example of the detriment of the draft can be seen in philosophical and ethical concerns. In this situation, the military faces a violation of freedom, which leads to forcing citizens to fight against their will. This response reveals a failure of democracy for how imposing service functions in practice. As a result, undermining shared civic duty occurs, leading to shifting national sacrifice onto a few. If an AVF had stayed, the outcome would have been forcing no citizens to fight against their will, showing a draft negates the purpose of the military. These examples demonstrate that the military draft is not just an abstract idea but a force that shapes real experiences, choices, and consequences. In conclusion, the draft influences the military more deeply than it first appears. Through examining its meaning and observing it in context, it becomes clear that the draft is harmful. Understanding the draft helps individuals make their own choices, avoiding getting duped by recruiters, and makes sense of desertion. While debates about the draft may continue, the core insight remains: an AVF is the only one that works. Ultimately, reflecting on the draft encourages readers to oppose the draft, reminding us that even the draft can reveal important truths about force and freedom.